Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to get my merchandise, and where to support me on Patreon. Today, it's the first Thursday of the month and we have a Fave 5. Fave 5 is where I pick a theme, oftentimes suggested to me by y'all or inspired by something that we've talked about somewhere on social media, and I go and pick out 5 patterns that fit that theme that I'm like, if I wanted something in this theme and was gonna cast on like tomorrow, these are ones that I would seriously consider knitting. I am not saying that these are like the absolute best. There are so many amazing designers out there and so many amazing patterns that, I mean, this could go on infinitely, but I narrow it down to 5 that really seem fun. This month's theme is based on part of the conversation from the last Thursday of the month of October, the Ask Me Anything. I go live at 7 p.m. and we have fun chatting together and I answer questions, but also there's the chat bar of everybody doing all kinds of fun stuff. And there are often questions in there that inspire me to make more videos. And someone asked what to do with all of the skeins, the single skeins of fingering weight yarn that they purchased early on in their journey through knitting and acquiring yarn. And the thing is, this is so very common. When you first start getting into knitting, and I'm sure crochet, you start exploring all different kinds of yarn, and there's so many amazing yarns, but you can't really think of what you want to knit to it, but you see this yarn, you're like, oh my god, this is a gorgeous yarn. And a lot of times it's a fingering weight yarn because there are all these amazingly beautiful hand-dyed fingering weight yarns out there. It's just like the #1 thing that people covet and buy, but you only buy one skein because you're early in your knitting career and you can't imagine needing multiple skeins because, you know, it's all you can do to get through that one skein. So we buy them and we love them and we kind of hoard them a little bit. We're little knitting dragons sitting on our little yarny hoards, and then we still love them, but we just don't know what to do with them because it's been a while and we can't get like a mate for them. Now, there are suggestions I made. You can use that skein held double with like another yarn to like make it thicker and stretch it out. You can stripe with it, like pair it with a contrasting color and work stripes with it. There's all kinds of things you can do, but for today's Fave 5, I went and found 5 patterns, and specifically part of the question that this viewer asked was a one skein project that is not a shawl, because there are tons and tons of one skein fingering weight shawls out there. They don't want to knit a shawl, and so for the theme here, I even made it a little bit more challenging on myself, so it's not just not a shawl, but also not a pair of socks, because you can pretty much knit an infinite amount of socks. I know sock knitters who that's all they knit, but one skein of sock weight yarn will knit a pair of socks. Now, not all, and I will link to this video, not all fingering weight yarn is sock yarn. They have different properties. Not all like sock yarns are going to be good for certain types of fingering weight applications, but they're the same weight. So these are my Fave 5 patterns that you could knit using one skein of fingering weight yarn, and it's not a shawl and it's not a pair of socks. And I even added in a little more complexity that I really looked with an eye towards focusing on patterns that would perform well in semi-solid to variegated yarns. Now, all of these patterns will look gorgeous in solid, but they also should all play, I'm pretty sure, fairly well with mild to even heavier variegated variation. So I made this one really tough on myself, but hopefully I have found some great patterns that you might like. If you do like one of them, all of the information on how you can get this pattern, any of these patterns to knit up for yourself, will be in the description notes below the video. There will be links to both a Ravelry page if you use Ravelry, and there will be a link to the designer's alternative, not Ravelry purchase location if you are a person who cannot use Ravelry. So let us switch over to this. Now I have all of the information pulled up on another screen, so you'll see me looking off to the side. It's so I can read and make sure that I'm giving you all the correct information. So this first one here is called the Scrunch Cowl by All Knit Up Designs, and you can see now I believe that this one is actually striped, but you can see how it would work really well, I hope, in a variegated yarn. I think it would be great in a solid. This is a very straightforward pattern, but it has this super fun scrunch detail where I believe you kind of put channels in it and you have to make an I-cord. Not 100% sure on the construction. That is for the pattern to reveal and not me. Let's look at the details. So this is, calls for fingering weight. They also say you could use lace weight held with fingering or 2 laces held together. We're looking at fingering weight. It says a US size 6 needle. That's a 4mm needle. And the specs are 400 to 900 yards. Now, so there is a larger version which will take more than 1 skein of yarn, but the smaller version definitely you can get done with 1 skein of fingering weight yarn. If you have 2 skeins, maybe you can do the big version or even more. And there are actually 4 sizes: lightweight small, lightweight large, which are going to be the fingering ones, and then heavyweight small, heavyweight large, which I think is holding something double. Not 100% sure. It is knit in the round, and it says it on the details that it has eyelets. So it is probably eyelets that you're running your I-cord through. And it says Scrunch Cowl is 4 patterns in one. And she says leftovers, mini skeins, or the perfect colors to stripe together. It is simple and soothing knitting. Lightweight uses only fingering weight, and it's got stripes in it, but again, you don't have to stripe it. And then with some simple eyelets. Okay, so it is really cool. Doesn't this look like a really soothing, fun, simple knit? What I really loved about it is an incredibly straightforward knit. Soothing mixture of stockinette and garter, a little bit of eyelets to make that, but that scrunch detail makes it really a fun and different project. So okay, let's see any more details. So for the yarn, for the lightweight small, which is the fingering weight, you need 100 grams of fingering weight and then 2 grams to make the I-cord. So you're just going to need a little bit of extra. I bet you could use ribbon too if you wanted to. The lightweight large, you need 140. So that is more than 1 skein. So what I'm focusing on is the little one. So the heavyweight small is 100 grams of fingering weight and 100 grams of lace weight. This is holding it double. Okay, so if you have extra skeins, you can do that. I'm trying to see if there's anything interesting. Nope. So the name, the mind behind All Knit Up Designs is Sierra, and totally encourage you to go look at more of her lovely designs. But this, I thought it'd be great to pop off with. Totally could do this variegated yarn, stripe it up, but you could get 1 skein and get that project done. It is a cowl, not a scarf. No, it's not a shawl. It is a cowl, not a shawl. Okay, next up is, this is Ataraxy. And I know normally I do not know, but apparently it means like a calm state of mind or something. So I actually looked it up. This is Ataraxy by Dana Gervais. These are not socks. These are slippers. And I love the idea of knitting slippers. As you can see, they're absolutely lovely. They have this really cool cable detail and some texture. I think this could hold up to a little bit of variegation, not like wild variegation, but if you go on the Ravelry page and look at already made projects, there are some fairly variegated ones. So I really like this pattern. It looks like tons of fun. It is knit on a US size 1, which is 2.25 millimeters. And it says it takes 200 200 to 300 yards of fingering weight yarn. So you could definitely get a pair out of a single skein of fingering weight yarn. You're probably going to want something with maybe a little bit of nylon in it but it's a slipper, so you might just be scuffling around the house in it. So, you know, may or may not. I could be really fun with a really, really soft yarn. Now, the original knitter did use, Dana Gervais did use an 80% merino, 20% nylon blend. So she did use particularly a sock yarn. So it might help it stand up, be lots of fun. And it says, okay, when you're focused on a beautiful pattern and using yarn you love to create something beautiful and unique, it's easy to lose track of time and not notice exactly the day's irritations faded away to nothing, satisfying. So it's about being calm. It is an elegant fitted slipper featuring unique construction that allows each slipper to be seamless. It uses Judy's Magic cast on, though you should use whichever cast on you would normally use for toe up socks. So that is really cool. There's a link to the video demonstrating the cast on method used in the sample. So that is really, really good to add in here. Instructions are included for 5 circumferences and the foot length is customizable. So it's very flexible. And the skills they're saying for is knit, purl, increases, decreases, provisional cast, seamless or provisional cast on cables grafting. So it has a few more techniques, but I think the product is definitely well worth it. And it has sizes, and the sizes, what it said, 5 sizes. So you've got narrow, medium, wide 1, wide 2, and wide 3. So it's going to fit a wide range. See what I did there? Of foot sizes, and you customize it to your foot length. So that is Ataraxy by Dana Gervais. Oh, and I have another picture of it. Look at these. Aren't they really cool? I love that she mirrored the cables. They're spiraling in opposite directions from a center point, and it's got a really lovely detail around the ankle. I think they're really fun looking slippers. So there we go. The next one. Not a shawl, not a pair of socks. It is a hat. Now, this is Pure Slouch by Stephanie Lotven. I'll put a link in the description notes below. You may remember that I reviewed her book, Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn. That is, she's really into stripes and gradients. And obviously you can use that here, but you can also just use a single skein of fingering weight yarn and have a lovely, slouchy, fun hat. Would work great in variegated. Now, let's see here. So you need a US size 1, 2.25 millimeter, and a US size 2, 2.75 millimeter. And it says it needs 150 to 390 yards. Definitely can get that out of a single skein of fingering weight yarn. The reason why there's such a wide range is because the pattern includes sizes baby, toddler, child, adult, small, adult, medium, and adult large. So the biggest one is going to take up almost your whole skein. And there also is a pair of matching mittens if you like that. So that is super fun. The Pure Slouch hat is a relaxing, no thinking, Netflixing kind of hat. It is the perfect project to have on hand when you want a no-nonsense project. It is slouchy. The pattern is written to optimize your yardage usage. I have provided the specific yardage necessary to complete the crown decreases, which allows you to knit without playing yarn chicken. So that is fantastic. Let's see here. If you want, she designed it with a self-striping yarn. So if you have like self-striping sock yarn, this would be a great application. But again, it would look amazing in a solid. It would look amazing in a variegated. It's just a great all-purpose slouchy pattern designed to use up a whole bunch of a skein of fingering weight yarn. The skills that she is saying is knitting in the round with a stretchy cast on, and it is a beginner level pattern. So that is super fun. I have another picture. Look at this one with the pom-pom. Loving it. And I also wanted to include this picture because you can see in this one, she did a variant with a really wide brim. So this pattern has a lot to play with. Great application for a single skein of fingering weight yarn. Next up, this one. This is for my variegated people. This is for the people who have a skein who they're like, it doesn't like anything. This is going to be great. Lee Meredith is an amazing designer of both knitwear, and also she does graphic design. There'll be a link to her website below. She has a lot of really fascinating stuff. This one plays a lot with construction, and there's a lot of motion in here to get the variegated yarns do amazing things. The name of this pattern is Bent by Lee Meredith. It calls for... Okay, and so there are multiple sizes here. So this calls for 405 to 1,215 yards. So if you have more than one skein, you can make it substantially bigger, but I'm specifically looking at the shorter scarf version of this because we're not doing shawls. This is a scarf. And there are 5 different lengths to be combined with any of 5 different widths. So you have a lot of customizability in this. It calls for a US size 4 needle, which is 3.5 millimeters. And she specifically says, designed for busy variegated colorways, this piece is full of very, very short rows, turning short color segments into stripes in chevrons, wavy lines, ovals, and perpendicular squishy garter stitch. The short bursts of colors come together to form a bent shape made long and narrow as a scarf, or short and wide if you like. The construction is fun and modular, no seaming, no picked up stitches. So I am fascinated by this pattern, and there's a lot interesting. She has provided a grid because she says you need enough fingering weight yarn. Here I'm going to show you another picture of this, how she has it wrapped. Isn't that cool? So the amount of yardage you need for the shortest length plus the shortest width is only 187 yards. And then there are like shortest, short, medium, long, longest. So it's the narrowest width with the longest length takes 405 yards. That is the scarf. But there are varying different sizes. It's really, really a cool pattern that you can definitely use to make one skein of highly variegated yarn fingering weight be really pretty amazing. So I think this one would be a lot of fun, especially if you like a pattern that is got a lot of stuff going on. It's not necessarily going to be hard, but it's not going to be coasting. This is like the exact opposite of the previous hat, which is just knitting stockinette in the round, which is great for sitting and zoning out. This one is going to be more engaging, but not necessarily difficult. Lots of fun. Bent by Lee Meredith. And number 5, fingerless mitts. Okay, not socks, not a shawl. Look how lovely these are. These are the Interwoven Fingerless Mitts by Joanne Klim. Klim, yes, I have that right. Sometimes I want to put L's after I's. Don't know why. My brain just does it to me somehow. So these call for 202 to 317 yards of fingering weight. So that is to do this length. I'm guessing if you want to try to eke out your entire skein, you can make the gauntlet, the cuff part, longer and use up more yarn. The sizes available are adult extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. So you have a wide range of sizes to choose from. It calls for a US size 1, which is 2.25 millimeters. So again, to use up the entire skein, you can simply make the gauntlet, the cuff, longer. Now, this says, inspired by connectedness and named for the interwoven magic that are family and friends. So that is super sweet. These wonderfully cozy fingerless mitts symbolize the feeling of being connected through the interwoven appearance of the soothing and uncomplicated stitches. So it just has a lot of really nice texture. It says the skill level for it is intermediate. The yarn they used was a merino nylon blend, but you could definitely do 100% merino or even some alpaca or some. This is something that you can play with fiber content. I have another shot so you can see the lovely thumb gusset. I just really liked the texture. Has a really great texture. We're looking at just knits and pearls, but it's one of those things that the knits and pearls add up to being more than you really think they would be, right? Because they just have a nice texture. I think this would work great with some variegated yarn, but also, as you can see, absolutely lovely in just a solid or a semi-solid. Anything else we need to talk about this? Definitely unisex. I mean, it's mitts. I love mitts. They're definitely going to need some DPNs. You're going to have to work small circumference for that thumb. That's the only real exciting thing going, like anything. It's not going to be particularly challenging, just a lot of fun. So those are my fave 5. We've got the interwoven fingerless mitts here, and then the bent scarf with all the short rows, the pure slouch, the really simple fingering weight hat, Ataraxy, the great slippers, and the Scrunch Cowl with the I-cord that scrunches it down, all of them super fun. Now, when I have a pattern that I think fits in with my theme, I like to show it to you, and I have one a little bit different. Normally I physically have it and say, here it is, but this pattern I actually designed for a third party, and this sample went off to live with them, so I don't actually have one of these around. I seriously should probably knit one because I really like this pattern. This is the Contraction Cowl, and it's called that because of its nature. It calls for 1 skein of fingering weight yarn, 400 yards, as like the most generic yardage that you can get in fingering weight. I knit it in a sparkle yarn, but it would work absolutely great in a variegated yarn as well. It calls for a US size 6. It's worked at a much looser gauge than both of the ones we've been looking at. That's 4 millimeters. The finished size is 44 inches in circumference and 8 inches wide at its widest. And I would say it's advanced beginner. The most complicated thing going on here is that it has a provisional cast on, which is not particularly hard, that you knit, and then at the end you have to Kitchener together. Now, if you don't like Kitchener and you're not really concerned about making it match perfectly, you can just whip stitch it together. You can button it together. There are any number of things you can do, but it does call for doing the Kitchener in seed stitch, which is a little bit challenging, but you only have to do it once, and it's only across the width. It's not that many stitches. There are specific structures in the pattern. Now, what is really cool that I like about this pattern is here's another shot, and you can see what's going on here. So these wrinkly patterns, the gathered patterns, are in seed stitch. We're just knitting and purling. But then look how it contracts in. These smaller that look like stockinette patterns, what you're doing here is simply double knitting, but you're double knitting slip stitch style. So what you do is, after you've finished your stockinette pattern, you are literally knit 1, slip 1 yarn in front, knit 1, slip 1 yarn in front all the way across. And you do that all, and you sort of flip it over, and then knit 1, slip 1. So you're slipping it. You're just knitting and slipping 1 with yarn in front. So what that means is you're only working half of the stitches on the right side and half of the stitches on the wrong side, which makes it contract in. I know that sounds a little bit wacky and a little bit complicated, but it is really, really straightforward. And what I'm doing in this pattern is playing with the how seed stitch tends to expand and get wider than it is tall, and this double knitting chunk really, really pulls in. So there's no gathering, there's no welts, there's no nothing in this pattern. It's just seed stitch and this little double knitting panel, and that causes this expanding and contraction of the cowl. It is a lot of fun. It's a very soothing knit, and I thought it worked with the theme. So there we go. That is my fave. Those are my fave 5 fingering weight patterns for one skein that are not shawls or socks. I made it super, that work well with variegated yarn. I made it complicated, but I hope that this gives y'all some ideas for something you might be able to do with a wayward skein that you still love very much, but you just haven't found its special purpose yet. Or you might need to run out and grab a skein just for one of these projects. Also, some of the things I talked about might spur you to think about what to look for when you're looking for the best pattern to match your special skein. If you have any suggestions for a future Fave 5, please let me know in the comments. Anytime someone makes that, I make a little snip of it and I save it to go back through for inspiration when I don't have an idea. As I said, this one came from the live YouTube live Ask Me Anything, so I don't have a clip for it, but thank you to the lovely knitter that asked this question initially. If you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button, and if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.